women voters, we're very concerned about voting. And with the general election slated to be held on November 3rd, the Delaware County and the Lower Merion Narberth League of Women Voters, along with the NAACP Pennsylvania State Conference, decided we needed a show to cut through all the information, some of it misinformation, swirling around about this election. Particularly, people need information from trusted and reliable sources like the League of Women Voters and the NAACP. We are nonpartisan. Tonight we have Nicole Keels Magruder, Political Action Chair for the NAACP Pennsylvania State Conference, and Jamie Mogul, an election rights lawyer and voter service chair for the League of Women Voters of Lower Merion and Narberth, to share their expertise on this subject. Welcome, Nicole and Jamie. It's really great to be together, albeit remotely. There's a lot to cover, and thank you, viewers, for submitting your questions. We've incorporated many of them in the beginning of our presentation, and we'll be staying on a little bit after we formally close down to answer all of those other questions that you've been sending in. And you can do that via the chat room. So I'd first like to ask both of you ladies what your organization is doing to support voters during these upcoming elections. Nicole, would you begin to tell us first?
Sure. Thank you, Roberta, and thank you again for having me on this evening. The NAACP Pennsylvania State Conference is focused on 4 major points this election season. Number 1 is making sure that our community has accurate, timely information to combat all of the disinformation campaigns out there. We're doing this through special topic and candidate forums, educational video shorts, and we've also created a dedicated civic engagement website, wakeupblackvote.com. Number 2, we're protecting the vote of those who may be marginalized this election season, our seniors and those that are impacted by the criminal justice system. We are safeguarding the rights of our seniors by partnering with advocacy organizations to make sure that they know how to vote by mail and vote safely. And we're working with other organizations in a postcard and video campaign for pre-detainees and for those who are incarcerated and those that are released, so they know that their voting rights and they know they can vote. Number 3, we're encouraging our branches to work with school districts and young adults in their respective areas to encourage the youth to actually get out this election season as poll workers. Number 4 is protecting the accessibility of the vote through several lawsuits that we currently have to make sure that our community isn't stripped of their right to vote due to poor planning and misallocation of resources where they're most needed.
Wow, you're doing a lot. Jamie, how about the League?
It's hard to follow that. Thanks also for having me. A lot of the work with the League does overlap with the NAACP, of which I'm also a member. And that work is both local and state. We have 30 plus branches, local leagues in Pennsylvania. And that work really is to support our counties in the administration of elections. So everything from poll worker recruitment to training to placement. I was just on the phone today here in Montgomery County with our voter services. So everything we can do to support both the administration of vote by mail, getting the right information out, like having programs like this, is really, really significant to cut through the misinformation. And so that's also about the heart of the League is really about civic engagement and participation. So that's voter registration, which looks a little different now in the post-COVID world. So you need to have Zooms like we're doing and forums and connecting with people as much as you can. And then also supporting, as Nicole brought up, our seniors, our populations that maybe don't have an internet connection and can't simply go online to fill out an application. So we need to do everything we can to support our communities from the youngest to the oldest to the most needy and those certainly that have special needs. And then also it's about having candidate forums, just like NAACP. People are looking for a nonpartisan resource. And then statewide, we too are part of lawsuits challenging and making sure that every voter has access on election day. It's really about free and fair access to elections and making it easy. And then our resource of vote411.org, you want to make sure to go there. And that's really a one-stop shop and helps you prepare for election day, planning your ballot and having all that information and connecting with your local league where you can find county specific information as opposed to statewide and national news.
Well, Pete, Pennsylvania is really in the spotlight for this presidential election because, as you know, we're a swing state and the road to the White House always seems to run right through Pennsylvania. But before we get to that, I also know there have been some big changes impacting our elections, and that's going to be right in time for this presidential election coming up on November 3rd. Jamie, do you want to speak to some of those changes that have happened?
Sure. This was really even before COVID, before a major presidential election, that Pennsylvania had its first voting reforms in over 80 years. And it came really just in time. And I say really because it included vote by mail. And what I mean by that is it's no excuse absentee voting. So even if you're absent, before you needed to have an excuse, like a student or somebody from the military. Now it's no excuse needed, so anybody can vote. And we also changed the deadlines, both for registration, extending them, as well as voting, the application for vote by mail. All of those changed as well. And we'll get a bit more into the specifics so everybody knows the correct dates that they need to know. And then also this kind of first form of early voting where you can go to your elections office and literally vote in person. You know, some other states have many weeks of early voting. We don't have that, but we're getting there. We're making small steps. It only took 80 plus years. But with those changes also came the elimination of straight party voting. So when you go in November, or when you get your ballot at the end of September for vote by mail, it's not one bubble fits all, okay? You're not just marking off just Democrat or Republican. You have to vote individually, but I know everybody here will be informed through our candidate forums, Vote 411, and all of our information to know and be prepared. And so those are some reforms, good and bad, but mostly really good.
Well, Jamie, you mentioned the fact that they had changed some of the deadlines for this election. What are those key dates, Nicole, that we need to keep in mind?
Yes. So October 19th is the last day to register to vote. October 27th is the last day to apply for your mail-in ballot, but we strongly, strongly recommend that you apply now and then send it in as soon as you receive it. You should expect to start receiving your ballots in later September, early October. The reason being that there are challenge periods and then the ballots must be certified and printed before they're sent out. So please be patient. And of course, November 3rd is Election Day.
And what about registration and applying by mail? We've gotten a lot of questions regarding this hot topic because there's a lot of stuff in the news. So can you start by just talking, first of all, about voter registration, Jamie?
Sure. Registration, it's still open, and we encourage everybody 18 years old, US citizen, PA resident for at least 30 days. And when I say 18, that includes students or young people who will be 18 by November 3rd. So want to make sure, if that includes you, that you get online to Votes PA. I call it the Vote Spa, votespa.com, and make sure to fill that out. You'll need a pen.id, so like a driver's license. But if you don't have one, you can put the last 4 digits of your social security number or other acceptable IDs. It will walk you through that. And then it's really important to remember that if you've been released from prison, if you're in pretrial detention, or if you're incarcerated for a misdemeanor, okay, not a felony, but a misdemeanor, you can still register to vote. So really important that is one great thing that Pennsylvania has going, is making sure that those who are recently released, that those voting rights are restored to them. One hiccup I will say about online is that if you don't have a driver's license or a pen.id, you do need to have a paper form to fill it out, but that's okay. You can still find or call your voter services, your specific county voter services. You can Google that or get in touch with us at the League or NAACP local branch. We'll make sure you get that information and that you get that form, that printed form, to fill out your voter registration and make sure that you get that in. And you can drop it off. You can also fill it out right at your elections office.
What about this vote by mail stuff, Nicole? That's what I hear a lot about on the news every day.
Yes, Roberta, you are correct. You can apply for a mail-in ballot on Votes PA and an absentee ballot on votespa.com. It might seem confusing that we have both absentee and mail-in ballots, but they are administered exactly the same. When you visit votespa.com, the website will help you determine the correct choice for you with prompts, such as if you're absent from your precinct in PA on election day, like if you're a student or in the military, you will be prompted to apply for an absentee ballot. But if you answer no to the questions, that's fine, and you'll be directed to apply for a no excuse absentee ballot. I know that this has been in the news, but absentee and mail-in ballots operate the same, so no worries. And the postage is paid for by the state for both. So yay. There is also a ballot tracker on votespa.com in which you can check the status of your ballot. And this is how that works. When you initially apply for a mail-in ballot, you get a message that your application was received from the Department of State. Then your county will notify you that your application was received and processed. However, you can also go online to votespa.com and check on your ballot status. If you see that your status states that it's pending for the 2020 general election, that means that you are good to go. If it says pending because ballots actually haven't been mailed out yet, please be patient. As I had stated earlier, they won't be mailed out until later in September, early October. So again, no worries.
Well, speaking about this mail, we've got a lot of questions about what's going to happen with mail-in ballots. Can you explain if someone applied for a vote by mail, but then wants to go in person or drop off the ballot in a box? Just how does this all work, Jamie?
Sure. There's a lot in the news, whether it's the crisis with the post office or people's own fears that maybe they're at risk and they don't want to go in person. I want to say I'm voting by mail. I mean, even the president and the first lady are voting by mail. So as Nicole mentioned, there is a ballot tracker, but maybe despite your concerns, I had a family member call me and say, I just don't feel, I want to make sure that I vote and I feel better if I go in person. So, look, that is an option, and you can cancel. Maybe you've already applied for a vote by mail and you want to cancel. So for instance, I checked off the box in the primary that I would also like to get a ballot in the general election. And so you can cancel your vote by mail status. You can do that via your county. Each county has a form to do that. There is still time. I also want to mention, I forgot, even if you think you're registered to vote, it's really important to check your registration status. You don't want to assume that you're registered. Maybe you haven't voted since the last presidential election. Shame on you, but hey, welcome back. So you just want to make sure that you check your registration, which is also on votespa.com. So back to the vote by mail, you can cancel your status and then vote in person on November 3rd. But more likely scenario is that the voter can get their ballot in the mail and they can go and take that ballot in person to their elections office. But maybe even with that scenario, you're saying the elections office is too far from me. And maybe you want to take that ballot. Maybe you didn't apply early, like you should, to get your ballot, and it was too late. And you said, you know what, I just don't want to risk it. You can go in person to the polling place, your polling place. Now, it must be your actual polling location. It can't just be any polling location in the county. And you must have not only the ballot, that vote by mail ballot, but you have to have the declaration envelope. So that's the envelope outside that you place the ballot in. There's a secrecy envelope as well. So your vote is cast in secret. And then the outside envelope in which you sign and you date, that's the declaration envelope. Both of those can be presented to the clerk at the polling place, and you can then have it spoiled and canceled, and you can vote at your polling place in person.
Wow, thanks, Jamie. There's certainly.
I should mention one more thing. What if the likely scenario that you don't get your ballot in time? I want to encourage everybody, no matter what, that you should always be given a provisional ballot. That's kind of a fail safe. If you go, every poll worker is taught, never turn away a voter. Make sure that you give them a provisional ballot.
So we have lots of options, and if all else fails, there's the provisional ballot. Now, thanks a lot, Jamie. We've heard a lot of possibilities. But what about these drop boxes now that are in the mail? What happens to that, Nicole?
With respect to drop boxes, the counties want them and plan to have them, but for now there's pending litigation about them. The NAACP and the league are definitely in favor of having drop boxes, but again, we have to wait on the legislation to find out how that pans out. So to answer your question, no, you cannot drop off a stack of other people's mail and drop boxes per PA law. However, mailing is different. It is indeed okay for you to drop off ballots at a post office or a mailbox, but not a drop box. Other people's ballots, you cannot do that per PA law to a drop box.
So I can instead, if my husband can't get to the polling place, I cannot take and drop his ballot in the drop box there or at the polling place. I could mail it if I had enough time.
You are correct, Roberta. Yes, that is exactly correct.
Well, I think I could get in trouble if I tried to do that, drop it in a drop box. So we've heard vote by mail ballots can sometimes get rejected as well, and that's not due to fraud, but for other reasons. So are there things that people need to worry about when they fill out this mail-in ballot, Jamie?
Sure. First I'll say the only fraud in election fraud is that people keep perpetuating this myth of election fraud, because it is very, very rare. Most of the time, issues that happen around elections really come down to administrative and clerical issues. And one of those examples are when people send in a vote by mail ballot, a mail-in ballot, and it's rejected. And an example of that could be that you don't sign the outside of the declaration envelope. So you'll get the envelope, and maybe I'll just go through just step by step. And it seems elementary, but we don't want people to think that they're sending in their vote and that it's cast, and then for a really mundane small issue that ballot cannot be cast. So it's really important when you get the ballot that you fill in the bubble, kind of like we did on standardized tests. And that should be dark ink, black ink, filling in the bubble, no check marks, no X's, filling in the bubble. And then you want to make sure that it's folded in the way that you received it. And it seems kind of like, why is she bringing up folding? Well, the actual process of canvassing, it's called canvassing ballots, really is the longest process. And that's where they open the envelopes, they sort them, and they prepare them to be scanned in these high-speed scanners. So you want to make sure to fold them because that saves a lot of time, and the same creases in which you got it. And then you're going to put it in the envelopes, and you're going to make sure to put the secrecy envelope inside the outside, this declaration. And you'll know what I'm talking about because there's only one envelope that asks you to fill out your address, and you're going to sign. Make sure that signature is your everyday signature that you use to register to vote, that you used on your driver's license, because that's what they're going to verify in the SURE system. It's called the SURE system, to verify that you're a registered voter. And you want to date it. You don't want to date it to your birth date. You want to date it to the date that you send it in. Again, it seems elementary, but these are really common mistakes. And that's part of the election code. You got to verify who you are.
Thank you, Jamie. I hope everybody remembers all of those things. And then there's election day. What about those who still like to vote in person? Will we still have polling places? Will we have enough poll workers? Will the counties be prepared? Nicole, what about the polling places?
Yes, Roberta, the counties are prepared with PPE and safety precautions for polling locations to minimize possible exposure to COVID. There won't be the same consolidation we saw in the primary election, but there will be some change of locations due to safety and health precautions. For instance, there will be no polling places at elder care facilities. Counties are doing all that they can do to minimize any changes, but there is a need for poll workers. Poll workers tend to be older, making them at risk. So it's important that we get others to fill in for them on election day. Please go to votespa.com to apply. You can be as young as 17 years old, as Jamie mentioned earlier, but that does require additional signatures and good academic standing. So please refer to your county's voter services website or contact the League of Women Voters or the NAACP if you need further assistance. And you also get paid while participating in democracy. So a win-win all the way around.
So Jamie, I just want to ask you one more question about those poll workers, because it seems like there's a lot of people at the polls. So it's just don't have one person there, right? So they'd have a lot of needs.
Yeah, and we did get a question submitted to us about are there enough poll workers? The short answer to that is no. So we went, as Nicole just went through, we definitely need people to sign up and have patience. That's another continuing theme you're hearing here. Have patience with the counties. They're really doing the best they can under a really crazy scenario, with new voting reforms, COVID, cuts to the post office, cuts to their budget. I mean, they haven't received the funding they need. So please have patience with them. But the poll workers, I'd say it's important to remember that there are elected positions. Most people don't realize that the judge of mostly 2/3 of the people that you see there are elected. So your judge of elections, they're the person that oversees the polling place. And they're elected as well as your majority and minority inspector. And those are not majority and minority party inspectors. That's just related to who got the most votes. That's the majority. And the minority is the person who doesn't have that majority of votes. And they too are elected. And then there's the machine operator, which is so crucial to have a machine operator. And that's an appointed position. So it's really important that if those positions aren't filled, because they are critical to even being necessary to fill out a provisional ballot. We talked about provisional ballots. You need to have certain figures like a judge of elections, as well as a minority inspector to sign off on those provisional ballots. So what do we do if the county doesn't have a judge of elections? There's a very typical scenario where somebody has been a judge of elections for maybe decades and doesn't feel that they can participate because they're at risk, or maybe they're immunosuppressant. They have to be careful. So we're going to need to appoint somebody. And the PA election code does allow us to appoint them. There's a 5-day rule. So maybe if you're a volunteer, like I was a volunteer, I ended up being a judge of elections this last primary election instead of a usual clerk, because they needed to appoint people and they needed people to fill those positions. So it's really important, if you're willing to help, we need you, the counties need you. I do think no matter what, if you feel comfortable, if you don't feel comfortable, there are alternatives for you, and the counties are working hard to make sure that all those vacancies are filled.
And I also remember that in addition to that, on votespa.com, there's a little training film about being a poll worker. So if you want to find out more about it, besides applying, you can see how, in fact, you might be operating at the polling place.
Sure.
I just want to thank you all. You've given us a lot of information. Do you have any quick final thoughts before we begin answering some of the other questions that came in, Nicole?
First off, I'll kind of go full circle. Just make sure that you actually check your voter registration status. And then, of course, request your mail-in ballot today, within the next 24 hours if you haven't already done so. And third, cast your ballot as soon as you know who it is that you're voting for. So when you receive that ballot in September, October, and you know who you're plan on voting for, go ahead and drop it in the mailbox next day. Don't procrastinate.
Jamie?
I think overall we need to consider, first, this is an exciting time. I think there's so much negativity, unfortunately, and voting has become partisan when really voting should be an equal opportunity experience. This is democracy and it should be accessible. So groups like the League, NAACP, we're working hard to make sure with our counties in Pennsylvania that it's an accessible experience, whether that's vote by mail, or if you go in person. And just remember to have patience with the counties. Again, there's pending litigation, there's even pending legislation, which we won't even know, and the counties won't even know till maybe later this month, or we're getting close to the end of this month, maybe even till next month. And that's a very short time frame to prepare for a major election. So having patience, and then remembering we may not, actually, I can probably say we will not have election results on election night. And that is okay. It is okay because we want to make sure that we have an accurate and safe election and not a rushed election. We're so used to everything being instant and tangible and connected, just like we are right now, but we need to give the process its thorough vetting and making sure that this is done correctly.
Well, I can't thank both of you enough, Jamie and Nicole, for sharing with us a lot of information and dispelling a lot of the misinformation that's out there. There was also a question, if you don't mind asking, what about third-party candidates? Are we going to see any third-party candidates on ballots?
Do you want me to answer, Nicole?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think right now there are we're in the challenge period, and that's why people say, how come I haven't gotten my ballot yet? Well, that's because there are third-party candidates, but then it goes through a process of legal challenges. Maybe some of the majority or minority parties are challenging the third-party candidates. And again, if they're a candidate, they'll be on Vote 411 so that you can find out who they are and their positions. And maybe if they're in one of the races that we're doing candidate forums, you can hear them personally speak to some of the issues that you're passionate about. So yes, there will be third-party candidates. So I don't know if you see are you seeing the chat? Because I see lots of questions. Should I just throw them out here?
Sure, I can't seem to see them, Jamie, so go.
Okay, we're in the technological age. So this was about straight party voting. And is that change to straight party voting in effect in person as well, or just for vote by mail? So I'll answer, any of us could answer that. And yes, that change is across the board. That was removed as part of Act 77, which were those reforms, the first reforms to Pennsylvania's election code in over 80 years. So again, it's not one bubble fits all. It's better to work from the bottom up, I like to say, or from the backside, so you don't miss any of the races that are involved in this election. And then here we have a question, maybe back to the drop boxes, Nicole. Can we use drop boxes ahead of election day to submit our mail-in ballot?
Well, like I said before, we're definitely proponents of the drop boxes, But as of right now, I would say just please be sure to check Votes PA for any updates in regards to the legal issues right now surrounding the drop boxes, to be sure exactly what that will mean for us as voters coming, election day. But right now, I would have to say just keep checking votespa.com for updates, because I can't give a definitive answer on whether or not that will be allowed.
Yeah. And that's important to remember too, that like we said, the counties want them, but it's also part of pending litigation. So here's the question: can canvassing, so as I talked about canvassing, that's that process where you open and sort all of the ballots. Can canvassing ballots begin before, capital letters, I like that, Ellen, before election day in PA? So I'll answer that. As part of the law right now, the canvassing can't begin till election day that morning. That is also part of litigation as well as possible legislation to extend that period to pre-canvass, meaning start to sort those envelopes. That is the most time-consuming part. Think about every envelope that's signed has to be confirmed through the SURE system to verify your signature, that it's you, that it's your ballot. And then opened and sorted, all the thousands of precincts, that takes a considerable amount of time. So hopefully via legislation or litigation that time is extended, but I know counties are working hard to get the right equipment, whether it's letter openers, sorters, high-speed scanners, hiring staff, having the space to really prepare for canvassing. So long and short, right now, they can't start till election day, but that might change as well, Ellen. So another question. Oh,
I found
go ahead.
one about college students, because a lot of the students I've worked with as interns are college students, and they have several options, and they're always confused about whether they should, use that absentee ballot or use the, no excuse mail-in ballot, or whether they should vote home or away at college. What advice do you give them?
You want to take it, Nicole, or?
Oh, sure. So actually, if they are away from home, they can definitely use the absentee ballot. Like I said, when they go to votespa.com, they've done a fantastic job with walking a person through exactly what is the appropriate ballot for them to select. So just following the series of questions, it will take them through the process, and they will still receive their absentee ballot.
What about if they have a choice? Like I know some of the students I've worked with are concerned because they said, well, right now I'm going to be away, but they could close school and I could be back home, and then my ballot will end up someplace else.
That is
that happened in the primary.
Yeah, that is very true. Jamie, I don't know if you wanted to chime in there.
If I understand correctly, maybe due to COVID and their campus, they're not going back to school and they already applied. They can change if they still want to vote by mail, they can change their address, and that's through their county voter services. So if I was a student, which I'm not anymore, but if I was a student and I had already applied because I thought I would be away at college and I wanted to change that address, I can do a change of address to get my vote by mail ballot at my home address since I didn't go away to school. Or you can cancel your vote by mail status. There's still time to do that. And again, that would be done through your county voter services. And the fail safe also is, you don't want that, but it's always in the back there that they can vote provisionally at home if they didn't get their ballot, or there's not enough time. But that's why we do forums like this. There is still time to make sure that you can get that vote by mail ballot if that's what you prefer, or cancel your status and vote in person on election day.
We just had about 9,000 students come to Villanova, and they come from all over the country. Do they have a choice where they vote?
Well, they need to establish residency. So that's part of the requirements so I think if Villanova they just moved in, if they haven't been here for 30 days to establish residency, but maybe they've already been here for several years, maybe they're a junior or senior, yes, they can establish residency here if this is where they live, and then proceed and vote accordingly. But I think that will come down to residency. I think if they're new students, they need to have been here for 30 days, which likely right now they could be, and still registered to vote. So it is an option. But again, you'll have to look at the calendar and the specific circumstances. So we do have more in the chat, very specific questions. Yes, Ellen is writing back again about, is it still pending whether the deadline for qualifying ballot is postmark or receipt by election date? And I think if I understand this correctly, you're asking about when you receive it. In the primary, 7 counties, including where I live, most of the southeastern PA region and Allegheny County, that deadline was extended. That's also part of litigation. Right now, it's got to be 8 p.m. by election day. And that means received, okay? Not postmarked, received by the election office. So that's also part of litigation. It also is something that the Secretary of State has now spoken to after receiving a letter from the Postmaster General over the concerns that they may not be able to sustain the amount of ballots that they get. And so using that letter, Secretary Bookvar then said, we would like to ask the court to extend the deadline by 3 days. So that means if they receive it even 3 days after election day, that it would be continued. But again, I want to note that has not changed yet. Okay, so it's really important to apply for your ballot now, because you can, votespa.com, and make sure that you do your part to get it in as soon as you get your ballot. So yes, and then Phyllis, hi Phyllis. Phyllis wrote in a similar question or a similar statement that I heard that the state of New Jersey changed the deadline to postmark, but I haven't heard that it has in PA. And that's right, Phyllis. Nothing has changed yet, but this is an exciting thing. It's a state of flux. Maybe that deadline will be extended, but right now, today, that has not changed. So should I keep reading the questions? This is kind of fun. You can have Diana's question. There's a lot of questions here. Thank you, everybody, for submitting questions. When do we expect to receive our ballots? I think Nicole answered that. Nicole, if you want to state again, just when people can expect to receive their ballots.
Sometime between mid-September to early October.
And we know as soon as we get it, we're going to fill it out and send it back in. Zandra, if we are using ballot tracker and our ballot has not been received by election day, is there any way to vote in person in case it got lost in the mail or something like that? And then she has provisional ballot ? Even though it was smooth for the primary, I'm concerned about putting my ballot in the mail. And I think a lot of people have your same concerns, Andra. Yeah, if you are concerned about the ballot tracker is a great thing. Nicole kind of went through it, that you can see and you're notified when you apply for it, you're notified when it's sent out to you, you're notified when it's received, and kind of gives you that sense of comfort of following the process of your ballot. But yeah, what if you don't get it by election day? And in that scenario, yes, I do recommend that you go in person to your polling location, and you always the fail-safe, you ask for a provisional ballot. And so I hope I've addressed that concern. But I hope that you will get your ballots, Andrea, and I hope it's as smooth as it was for the primary. And then, oh, Diana, PA State Conference. Hi, Diana. My question is more about registration. Many of the colleges are closed and therefore are asking about registration. Some colleges began opening, are now closing. And so I think that was a lot to what Roberta was asking about. And that is a situation in flux. I think, unfortunately, with COVID, many of these schools, they're open, but they might end up closing. And that could be right around the time of elections. And so we want to make sure whether they're in Pennsylvania or they're outside, and they've applied for a ballot to receive it at Villanova, that we do everything we can. And there are hotlines for voter services. Of course, we're in Pennsylvania, so the lovely ladies and I on this call, we're not necessarily able to help them outside of the state. But if they have questions, of course, and there is a voter protection hotline, and that's 866-R-VOTE, OUR-VOTE, the League, NAACP, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, Common Cause, all run that nonpartisan voter hotline. And that's always available to you. And it's also available in other languages. I should say, finally, the Votes PA, the registration is available in Spanish on votespa.com now. All right, we still have more questions. So, okay, Xandra's asking, can you, what if my filled out ballot hasn't been received by the election office? Oh, good point, Xandra. So you're following the ballot tracker, and I would recommend, I know I'm answering all these questions, but Nicole.
No, you're good. Because it's right in line with what you just explained, so.
Yeah. So in that sense, Sandra, that's, I hope, a rarity that happens. And if it is too close to the election where you cannot try to get a replacement ballot from the voter services, I would again recommend that you go into the polling place and you vote provisionally. Though I want to just caution everybody, we're going through all of the what ifs. They're very rare. I know that there was some snafus in several counties with people maybe receiving the wrong ballots or the wrong information. And I think a lot of the counties, from my experience, and Nicole, you could speak to this as well, they have learned from the primary. They are preparing, even here in Montgomery County, they've got more equipment, they hired a new printer. So this is really to make sure that they've learned from that process and that they're prepared for election day. But again, that's why we have these forums, so that even worst case scenarios, Andrea, I hope that doesn't happen to you. You can go in person and vote by mail. Barbara's, hi Barbara Amschutz. Can you hand in your ballot at the election bureau? Nicole, do you want to answer that?
Yes, you absolutely can.
Yeah.
And actually that is also a way of early voting. So if you don't feel comfortable dropping your ballot in the mailbox, you can definitely go to your County Board of Elections and drop it in and hand it over to them and cast your ballot.
And we got asked, I know this was slightly covered, we got asked about satellite offices in the respective counties. Nicole, do you want to talk about that?
I don't.
You want me to? So satellite offices would be extensions of an elections office. So counties are trying to plan for them, but I don't want to speak to every county, and these things haven't been announced yet. But I know in Montgomery County, they're trying to plan for what would be really extensions of in-person voting. So it would take the brunt off of election day, and maybe for those people who are nervous about putting their ballot in their mail, or Xandra's example, maybe she hasn't gotten it, you can go in person, and it's kind of a one-stop shop. You can both register, apply to vote by mail, and vote in person. But really that'll come down to resources. That has to be staffed. There's also legal implications that, it's got to be inside of a government building, like a municipal building. And that's to really make sure that everything is in compliance with regulations. So every county is different. And I would stay tuned for that. And that will probably come later, probably closer to when the ballots start going out. And that is an option, especially in bigger counties. I know Philadelphia is planning on having them as well. Phyllis is asking, what is the status of the satellite offices? And I know Phyllis is here in Monco. Montgomery County is planning to have them, but the hours and the locations, that's all to be determined.
There's also
there's
a question I was going to ask Nicole if she knows the answer to this one about what kinds of arrangements are being made for like senior homes and nursing facilities? Because I know it's somewhat different. In many places, they actually were polling places and now they're not.
Right. So in regards to those that are actually residents in senior citizens homes, what advocacy groups like the NAACP are doing is creating partnerships with homes so that they understand what the new process is, and so that they can help the seniors in their community with the new process. So they are the trusted ambassadors within that community. So making sure that those administrators, those that are on the grounds, can communicate the information to the seniors that reside there so they understand the mail-in ballot process, because that's what we really, really want. But those that are, still going to go in person, that they understand what their options are. And for nursing homes, they really don't have that option. So it's pretty much all in-house. So for them to set up a system where these patients are actually able to go ahead and request their mail-in ballot, they can still complete it, and then the actual facility can then mail their ballots, and that's still within the law. The NAACP is also working with several advocacy groups that focus on seniors and recruiting home care assistants to act as our ambassadors, because a lot of our seniors are currently, the only folks that they see are those home care aides that visit their homes. So we're training those home care aides on the process of the mail-in ballot. So they're going in there and they're talking to Miss Judy every day, and they're asking her the question, hey, did you fill in your mail-in ballot? Or do you have a plan on how to get to the polling location come November 3rd? So they're having these discussions and they're helping them through the process. So that's something that we're very, very excited about. And we're sure that that'll be effective, especially for those seniors that sometimes kind of get, will fall through the cracks, especially with everything that's going on. So we are working very diligently with those groups that are already focused in that particular area to help support.
I'd say also that's incredible work, and it plays off of what I think the counties are trying to do to make sure, because we got a question about this, about what if you're senior but you're not in an elder care facility? And that's to make sure that that person still has accessibility, whether it's access to the polls. Even if a lot of older people still want to go in person. So that's really through groups like NAACP, the league, the local leagues, we try to connect them with resources to help them vote, whether it's vote by mail. But the counties also are providing resources to condominiums, these bulk areas, maybe elder care facilities. So it's always a good idea, if you're not sure, to, not that I want to clog the phone lines, but the voter services, your county can definitely help you, whether it's bringing you an application, because they've done that, and making sure that your vote counts on election day. But I want to do one more question because we still have time, and I'll throw this to Nicole again. What can we do locally to get out the vote?
Wow, there's a lot that you can do locally and still be safe. Yeah. So with the NAACP, we've really leveraged our digital technology now. We use a lot of social media shares. And if I can just rewind for a minute, we have the power. You're the League of Women Voters, we're the NAACP, and yes, people listen to us, but your friends and your family listen to you 10 times more than they do us. So you actually have more power than we ever could have. So when you talk about what can you do, you can talk to those family members who didn't vote the last go round for whatever reason, and have those discussions. And if you prompt them to go and cast their ballot, the likelihood of they actually doing it increases exponentially. And then in regards to disinformation, we've talked about that. Be very conscious about what you're sharing on social media, what you share in your circles, because people believe you because they trust you. You are their friend, you are their family member. So if there's something that looks a little racy and it looks kind of fun and you think that you want to share it, you could actually be kind of like undermining the whole process. Be sure that what you're sharing is from a trusted resource. If it's not from, you know, an advocacy group that you trust, or it's not from Votes PA, just be very cautious about what you share. And then also stand up if you hear someone that perhaps has some misinformation or something that's floating around on the streets. Be sure to direct folks back to Votes PA. Direct them back to a source that has trusted information. So that is something that you definitely can do. You could also join the League of Women Voters, join the NAACP, and we have a lot that needs to be done to get us over this hump during this election season. So there's plenty to do. Reach out to us, and you know, we have a list. Kidding aside, you know, we have phone banking opportunities. You can do that safely from home. We have postcard campaigns that we're doing. Again, you can do that safely from home. You can host watch parties. That creates that dialogue, that constructive dialogue as well, with your friends and family. So there's all types of fun stuff that you can do that doesn't require a lot of time, but still allows you to get out the vote.
Awesome.
Jamie?
I'm energized just hearing all of that. Zandra asked, when will we know where our polling place will be in November? I usually vote at the Green Hill. Yes, I know right where that is, which was eliminated in the spring. And I wonder when the residents here will know where they will vote. Do you want me to answer?
Sure.
Well, so I know the counties are working hard. It's not the consolidation that we had with the primary. However, we do need to consider that a scenario may happen that we have a surge in cases and that there may be a consolidation. So I know the counties are planning for that, but they're doing everything they can to minimize any change in venues. As we said before, I think Nicole mentioned that the counties, there are some places that they just can't help but avoid whether, and sometimes it's not even about health and safety. It's just because the location has said, we can't have a polling place here. So they're trying to do everything they can. I don't know the exact date, but hopefully that will be out soon. And I know every county will be notifying their residents, whether your location is your current location or it's a changed location. And then also you can go to vote411.org or votespa.com and look up your polling location. Always something good to do before you plan to vote, and that's fun. Like Nicole was saying, make it part of a family or a friend. Make it a thing, because then you hold each other accountable. And this is when people vote, right? This is, people are interested. It's in the news. And hopefully it's a continuing thing beyond just the general election. So Diane is noting here, Diana from the PA State Conference, at the nursing homes, many will not be able to get out and some will need help in completing the forms. Will that just be partnering to ensure that mail-in ballots are being used and mailed? And I think, Nicole, you were speaking to that.
Yeah, and I would say it's really partnering to ensure that those folks that work in those facilities understand what the process is. Just because of COVID and a lot of the restrictions, a lot of facilities are really hesitant to let outsiders come in on a regular basis just because of possible exposure, both ways. So it depends on the location, but from what I've seen, they really aren't having a lot of folks come into their facilities to help with anything. So we thought the best strategy is kind of like a train the trainer, and whatever supports that we can give those nurses, those physicians, those unit secretaries, all those folks are individuals who can help those individuals actually complete their mail-in ballot requests and complete them and get them mailed.
Yeah. There are restraints because of the election code, right? That, as we noted, I can't take Roberta's ballot and put it in a drop box, unfortunately. Right. Now I can, if somebody needs help mailing something, I certainly can help doing that. So we want to make sure to get them the resources like you all are doing. So there's definitely a lot of questions here. I think overall, we're getting close to time. But this is really exciting. I think people are interested and motivated. There is a bit of fear, so hopefully we waylaid that a bit, the frayed edges and of what's to come. But there's candidate forums coming up. I know NAACP, you're doing the state races and along with the league, and that's going to be great for the state attorney general, the state auditor general. Is there another race I'm missing? There's one more state race.
Treasurer, auditor.
Treasurer, that's right. They're all important,
Yes.
the money. And then also we have local races, whether that's congressional, the league is doing that. I know in our area, the Lower Merion League and Central Delaware County, as well as the Radnor League, lots of great things to come so that people are informed as soon as they get their ballot, that they can fill it out and be prepared with all of that information. So one last question, how long does it take to process the application for mail-in ballots? That's a good question. Well, first it goes through the state, and then it's verified and it's sent off to your individual county, and it goes through a SURE process. That's an acronym for the system to verify that you're a registered voter. So it is a bit of a process, but it also is not something that is too lengthy. I know I applied for a ballot and it happened within, less than a week. Though it's better to do it soon. And I think for every county, it's different. So I don't want to give any set timeline. Roberta, do you have any info on that?
No, all I would like to add, though, to our discussion is the fact that all of these delays are sometimes necessary to make sure that your vote counts and it's valid and it's counted. I think the other thing that's important to mention is the fact that before you vote, remember to go to Vote 411, because you can actually see a sample ballot there. You can find out about the candidates, particularly when there is no straight party voting. You may want to actually look at the individual candidates and see what qualifications they have and who might best represent you in those offices. So Vote 411 is really handy. So if you can, when you get that mail-in ballot, check that site, because hopefully all the candidates, and if you are working for any candidate, make sure they have their information current up on Vote 411, because that helps everyone.
Yeah. I'll also say if you're going in person, another good resource, maybe you haven't voted on the new machines, and all 67 counties have new machines. And so you can also find that on votespa.com. There's a great resource where you can do a simulation by county and you can see the voting machine before you go. So you're not nervous. It's really not scary, I promise. It's actually less, I think, less time consuming, and it's much more secure than our previous voting machines. So this was great. I don't know, Nicole, do you have any last words?
Thank you. No, that was it. This was great. I hope it helped those that are watching. And please feel free to reach out to your local league of women voters or your local NAACP branch. We are all in full GOTV mode. So please reach out, be engaged. We're here, and for this election season, here to support whatever you need.
Great. Well, thanks so much. And please engage with us on social media. I know we're LWVLMN. I'm on there. I'm posting. I know Nicole's busy doing that for almost the entire state. And then Roberta's got this great project with videos of regular voters, people like you and I, talking about why they vote. And so I encourage you to check us out and join our groups and then vote. You're on here, so you must be interested in voting. So thanks so much. And Roberta, I'll let you take it away.
Well, again, on behalf of the leagues of Radnor, Central Delaware County, Lower Merion, Narberth, and the NAACP, we're really glad you joined us today. And we hope that you will continue to monitor and see what's going on with elections throughout our Commonwealth and our nation. I would also like to give a special shout out to our tech staff who's been working with us to make sure everything ran smoothly. And hats off to Anna Marie and to Anne and for everyone who's made it possible for us to join you this evening. So thank you again, and hope to see you at the polls or at a drop box or a mailbox with that ballot. Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.